Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Shirin Adelman. I'm a partner here with Lengea Law. I've been practicing for over 20 years in the corporate and healthcare space and appreciate everyone joining. This is a fantastic turnout. At Lengea, we work with over 2,500 healthcare entrepreneurs across the country to help them build practices that are properly structured, protected, and positioned to grow. And one of the patterns that we're seeing is that being an exceptional provider does not automatically prepare someone to build an exceptional business. Practice owners are often balancing compliance, staffing, operations, patient care, and growth, while also trying to keep pace with major changes in technology and patient behavior. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Michael Antosy, Director of Practice Growth Consulting at MyAdvice. Michael has spent more than 15 years advising healthcare practices on how to build stronger digital infrastructure, attract the right patients, improve conversion, and create more predictable revenue streams. Our conversation today will focus on what is actually changing in healthcare marketing, where practices are unknowingly losing opportunity, and how owners can build businesses that are not only more visible, but also more scalable and valuable over time. So without further ado, Michael, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to this discussion.
It's my favorite time of year when I get to do this with your group. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. Yeah, we love having these presentations with you. So look forward to a great discussion.
Absolutely.
So we can begin with a question that gets to the heart of what many practice owners are experiencing right now.
Uh-huh.
We've worked with hundreds of healthcare practices over the years. Some continue to grow while others stay stuck despite working extremely hard. What actually, in your opinion, what actually separates those two groups?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Honestly, I don't think that the difference is effort. Most practice owners, they work incredibly hard, as you and I both obviously know. They're seeing patients all day, they're managing staff, they're dealing with vendors, handling payroll. Um, yeah, and then somewhere in the middle of all that, they're just trying to figure out how the heck do I grow my practice, right?
Hmm.
So when I hear someone say, "Oh, I've tried marketing before and it didn't work," I'm word of mouth driven. That's fine. I usually respond with, "Well, what exactly did you try?" Because more often than not, what they've tried really isn't a strategy. It's just a collection of tactics. So what does that actually mean? Maybe they're posting on Instagram when they remember to do it. Maybe they've hired somebody to build a website 5 years ago on Wix that, by the way, is not ADA compliant. Maybe they ran some Google ads for a few months and didn't really see some good leads come in. Maybe they're asking for reviews every once in a while. And look, none of those things are actually bad, but they're just disconnected. And disconnected marketing creates disconnected results. I kind of compare it to like building a house, for example. So imagine you've spent a fortune on building a beautiful kitchen, and you have these beautiful cabinets, and you've done all of like the legwork, beautiful tops and everything like that. But you've done that before you've actually poured the foundation in your home. So the cabinets, they might be really, really pretty, they might be gorgeous, but eventually they're going to crack because the structure that's underneath isn't supporting them. And this is what I see practices doing every single day when I have a meeting and they're talking about, "Michael, how can you help me?" They spend thousands of dollars on advertising before they've actually built a website that converts. Or, maybe they invest into a lot into social media before they've actually built the credibility through their Google reviews. They're thinking about this whole AI and AI and Chat GPT rankings when in reality it's taking them 3 days to actually respond to a lead. Um, so it's not that they're making bad investments, they're just simply doing them in the wrong order. So the practices that we see consistently grow, it's about their mindset and how they think. They're not asking the question, what is the next marketing tactic? Instead, what they ask is, how do I build a business that predictably attracts the right patients? And that is a very, very, very different mindset. Um, they're building systems that help to generate reviews consistently, systems that keep their Google presence very accurate, systems that help to respond to leads in minutes instead of hours. So over time,
Yeah.
what ends up happening is that those systems, they begin to work together. And that's when marketing stops feeling like an expense and it starts becoming part of the value of the business in and of itself.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think those are great points. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think kind of creating those digital assets and infrastructure is critical. Some things that we see are, I think, and I completely agree with you. I don't think it's based on effort.
Yeah,
I think what we see a lot of people doing, especially before a sale or if they're kind of looking to re-pivot, is sometimes they're relying heavily on the owner's personality, their
yeah.
personal reputation, their relationships, their personal hustle. And one person can't do everything, even if that person is superhuman, it's just not sustainable. So definitely diversification is key. The practices at scale have diversified the growth, impetus from one person to the business itself and the overall team.
I'm
And
curious.
I mean, I guess obviously since I'm a lawyer, we also view any of the legal documents, contracts, information should be belonging to the clinic as opposed to a single provider or third party vendor. So always interesting to kind of see that legal intertwining with growth. But yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said.
Well, if you think
Those are
about it,
very key.
you can't grow without having you're right, like business infrastructure, business foundation. Like I
Yeah.
think I told you yesterday, like we're my wife and I we're investing into this Airbnb property right now. Like we can't bring in revenue unless like we're legally protected by having our home like properly structured into an LLC. And is that structure in alignment with like my insurance, for example? Like we can't accept $1 of revenue until we make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think those are really critical. And I think it's just important to pre-plan at the outset and think about these issues.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know what are some of the I'm getting a little bit spicy here if you don't mind, but what are some of
Yeah.
the dangerous assumptions that you see practice owners making today? One that might be exposing them more to legal risk that they might not be aware of, one that might be quietly costing them growth opportunities. I'm curious to know what you're seeing on that front.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I think to put it completely bluntly, I think doing what everyone else is doing. I think from a legal standpoint, keeping up with the Joneses is incredibly dangerous
Yeah.
from a compliance and legal perspective. We handle a lot of audits and practices that look to what their peers are doing and kind of base their defenses to their operations based on, what others are doing are not really going to be in great shape. Explaining why a practice operates in a certain way because that's what everyone else is doing is not going to be justifiable. And I think this kind of goes into what you were saying. I think another assumption that we see is, we see a lot of practices investing in a lot of leads and visibility. They have SEO, social media advertisements, and they judge success by how many leads are coming in. And I think this kind of goes into what you were talking about. Leads are critical, but the next step is what happens to that lead.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, as you were saying, if there's slow follow-up, unorganized consultation process, as you were saying, no real retention or referral machine, it doesn't convert the pricey traffic to lifetime revenue.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up because so one of the topics right now that I am lecturing a lot on is this idea of what we call speed to lead.
Mm,
And so it's so funny because a lot of practice owners they think that they have to spend more on marketing and spending more equals more growth,
yeah.
or it actually doesn't work that way. Um, you can spend as much money in the world, but at the end of the day, like if your systems are not well integrated, then you're not going to be feeling that forward progression the way that you want to. Anyway, getting back to speed to lead. So here's a data statistic that honestly can be a game changer for your practice if you're implementing it, if you know this in the right way. When that
Hmm.
lead hits your CRM, when there is engagement of that lead within the first 30 minutes of time, on average, a practice is taking that opportunity from the inquiring stage to the consult stage 78% of the time.
Wow.
At minute 31, the conversion rate of that lead drops off by half to 34%.
Wow.
That's about a 50% disparity gap.
Yeah.
So now for the practice owners that are watching this, I might ask you the question, if I'm, say, seeking out any of your services, if it's GLPs, if it's microneedling, body contouring, tox, whatever, I want to get that patient into my door that does not know of me. Are they doing that homework or their research about your practice between the hours of 9 to 5?
Mm.
Could be, but more often than not, we always see when we look at data metrics for all of our practices, more lead generation, more website traffic happens at the 5 p.m. hour to 2 a.m. That's just when we as consumers have time to consider the investments that we might want to be making. But yet, what
Yeah.
happens is that your practice is closed. There's no one there to engage. And this might even apply to law practices too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is really the gap that AI is helping to solve, is that, if you had better AI systems that really represent your voice on your website, that understand what it is that you do, it creates that instant engagement for you without you actually needing to be there.
Hmm.
We published a great case study for one of my clients, and I promise you I'm not BSing you. Her name is Dr. Martha Stewart. She's a derm that we work with in Louisiana. But her practice is word of mouth driven. Built her practice off of referrals. And look, we all love our referrals. Don't get me wrong, but relying on referrals is also not a growth strategy. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, within a month's time of just utilizing AI chat integrations, she went from a 20 website lead average to well over 60.
Wow.
But of that increase, 55 had actually converted into revenue because of better engagement. So this is again why we say it's absolutely not about spending more money. It's about having better systems in place that can help to support you.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great points. Absolutely. Yeah, just what happens after the lead is so critical.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned AI. Obviously, that's the topic of the day.
Yeah.
So there's enormous noise around AI right now, and kind of wanted to know, what is genuinely changing in how patients search for and choose healthcare providers, and what is kind of simply hype?
Yeah. Look, I don't. You're so right. It's like everybody has an AI that does something for them.
Yeah.
It's um, it's a question I get asked probably more than anything else right now. It's someone is saying that Google is dead, or our website's dead, or is SEO dead because of more people are going to Chat GPT or what have you. Number one, let me just actually preface something. We just hot off the press. I read an article earlier today. Google still drives 90% of your search. Okay, so
Yeah.
we understand, yes, ChatGPT is definitely changing some things, but when we talk about where the majority of eyeballs go, it is still on a search engine.
Mm.
Um, you know, I would say think about your own behavior for just a quick moment. 10 years ago, if I wanted to find a restaurant, I certainly would Google it.
Yeah.
5 years ago, maybe I would do a search on Google and I would read a few reviews. But yes, as of today, there is more people that are turning to AI platforms, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. You might be looking at some of the new Google AI overviews. You might be asking Gemini. You expect an answer and not just a list of different websites. And so patients, that, frankly, they're doing the same thing. They're asking questions like, okay, well, who's the best Botox injector near me? What's the recovery like after I get blepharoplasty done? Who specializes in doing hormone treatment for women that are over 50? AI is really increasingly becoming the first stop in that research process. Now, with all that said, here's where I think people actually get it wrong. Some people hear that and they think, well, okay, websites don't matter anymore. It's actually the opposite is very true. The website that you have for your practice has become more important, not less. And this is the reason
Hmm.
why. Because AI doesn't invent expertise.
Hmm.
It seeks it out. It learns from your website. It learns from your reviews. It learns from your content. It learns from your Google business profile. And it looks for the consistency of what you're creating with your digital footprint across the internet. So instead of thinking of your website as being like a digital brochure, you really want to have the mindset and start thinking
Hmm.
about it as a practice's source of truth, because
Hmm.
it's where AI and patients, it's where we all go to understand who you are, what you specialize in, and why somebody should actually trust you.
Hmm.
Um, this is actually
Yep.
a really interesting statistic. And we found this out through this year alone, is that websites on average on their click-through rates from search is down about 33%.
Wow.
Now, you might think that, okay, well, that means website traffic is down. That's not necessarily always the case. What's happening is that more patients with their behavior with search, they're not doing as much browsing anymore. They're just relying on their AI to tell them where to go to, and that's where they're tending to go to. Like they're trusting what their AI has to tell them. So, that's a very different conversation in terms of, how we start to think about some of our digital positioning. Um, so, how do we what do we do with that information? Um, what I would say is this: is that you should not be chasing every new AI tool that comes out next week. We want to focus on becoming the practice that AI wants to recommend. So how do we do that? We publish content on the answers that real patients are actually asking. You build a strong review profile. You keep your business profile on Google accurate. You make sure that your website clearly demonstrates your expertise, and you have to stay consistent, because AI, it rewards that sense of credibility. It rewards the authority. It rewards the practices that continually educate rather than just simply advertising.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those very, very smart points and words of wisdom. Yeah, I mean, I think from what we're seeing as well, I think it may be kind of the old-fashioned way in a little bit. Um, AI, the skill at the end of the day, also skills and competency of the providers speaks for itself, as does word of mouth referrals. I think you have a very in-depth and scientific knowledge of AI. I think I think facially, AI tools summarize and rank, the same proof points patients have always relied on: before and afters, reviews, credentials, and they're doing it outside of the medical spa's website. And you make a great point that the website is still crucial.
Yeah,
Um, it's just that the AI is just summarizing what's going on more truthfully, I think. But the fundamentals of excellence in service, great patient results, raw metrics of client satisfaction are still the raw material that AI is working from. And people stay with providers they love. So, at the end of the day, that hasn't changed.
I think that I see so many practice owners that are also just getting so caught up on some of what's hot today.
Yeah,
For a minute there, like AI was pulling a lot of sources from like Reddit, and everyone's like, well, now I got to get my Reddit profile really going. And honestly, that came and went like that. So,
yeah.
like, don't be distracted, right? At the end of the day,
Hmm.
we want to be consistent and disciplined with our approach. When I start to look at success, this is an analogy that I use. I've got two little boys at home. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so, when I take them to the playground and they want to go on the merry-go-round, for example, I start to push them. They're pretty heavy. It's hard at first, right? I'm just like pushing, like, damn, like you guys, like, I'm speed
Yeah.
you guys right.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But as that wheel starts to turn and as it starts to go, like the effort becomes a lot easier because we've stayed disciplined to the momentum of consistency. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's, when we start to really want to get more leverage and opportunity from our strategies, that's where I would just say stay disciplined to your approach.
Mm,
You know,
absolutely.
one of the things, especially now we're like thinking about this whole realm of AI and just how it changes. I mean, the thing about digital marketing is that, and this thing I love about this industry, is that things are always changing. There's always like new things that, um, as much as I just said, like you want to stay consistent. The other thing is that we have to also understand that we live in a very evolving environment when it comes to digital strategies. And so, one of the things I've also been thinking about is that when we think about like 3 years from now, um, on the legal side of things, like what do you think that the practices that are thriving are going to be doing differently than from the practices that are struggling to remain relevant? Have you have you seen
Yeah.
anything there on that front?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very nuanced question. I think the thriving practices are going to stop treating growth, compliance, and business value as three separate silos or divisions. Their content, data, website, brand will be owned digital assets that are properly documented and legally protected. The med spa, the medical spa or clinic, wellness clinic should be valuable and defensible on its own and not just valuable because of who happens to be running it that year. And I think that kind of goes into your point that don't get distracted, have a consistent strategy. But from a legal perspective, compliant operations and marketing go hand in hand. They actually supplement each other. Um, you know, struggling practices, depending on, whether they're using a specific ad platform and or algorithm that's working this quarter, if marketing vendors hold the keys to their own website or data, if they have no real answer, if a regulator, an auditor, a buyer, or a key provider asks the hard questions about how the practice actually operates, those things accumulate over time. And in 3 years or 5 years, or whatever time period, that gap is not going to be small, and it's going to show up directly in the practice's value. So I think from our perspective, compliance and marketing absolutely are good friends, and they should be kind of treated hand in hand.
Let me ask you, what are some of the things that you see practices doing on a marketing side which are not compliant?
So I think a lot of it goes back to the website. And I think because people we have easier travel these days, but people essentially look at someone's website first. And I think if you're marketing aggressively on your website, making exaggerated claims of efficacy, saying things are FDA approved when they're not,
Yeah,
making false claims. If you're not prominently displaying a medical director on your website and showing that you have a physician on board, those things, again, those things will be targeted pretty quickly. And those are all opportunities for someone to give you a very hard time. I just think anything that's exaggerated and in any respect is never a good plan. Always be consistent and be pretty modest as more fact-based as to what you're presenting on your website. But it's funny because the website is a tool, but it can also be a target.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I talked with I did a webinar with Sarah many years ago, just talking about the impacts of like if you don't have like an ADA widget on your website, for example. Have
absolutely.
you come across any of your clients that have been targeted for that reason? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, it's interesting. With the explosion of social media, there's an explosion of this cottage industry of these firms that just target websites. They're kind of predatory firms. And we have had clients that have been sued because their websites are not ADA compliant. They're not accessible to people with disabilities.
Yeah,
So it's an interesting case because it's not necessarily someone who has a disability that's suing who would benefit from a better website. It's a company that is kind of scouting multiple websites to assess a website's, accessibility, which is interesting. But absolutely, we have had clients unfortunately put into that situation.
any idea what were some of their lawsuits like? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, it can be generally you settle because litigation is so expensive, but it could be in the tens of thousands of dollars in terms
Tens
of settlements. And
of
it's
dollars.
so easy to avoid. Um,
Oh my God.
it's just one of those things that you can just easily avoid.
Yeah. For those who might not be understanding this, and if you don't mind, I'll just show an example here of what this
Yeah,
actually looks
absolutely.
like. So when we're talking about this, guys, if you look at this little guy right down here, this is your little man sticking out with his arms out. Those that have been to Burning Man, you might appreciate that image. Um,
Yeah.
but this is your ADA widget. So, are there parts on your site where, as we're looking at this, can we, oh, it's too bright for my eyes. Can I darken the contrast? Or Can I increase my text size that's right here? You're talking about a five-figure settlement, though. I mean, that is just bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
our clients might not even spend that with some of our services over a course of a year, and it's for lead generation. So that's pretty remarkable that that can be that high. Do you tend to find, is it practices that are like more are they more established when they're getting those lawsuits, or is it like new practices? What are you finding there?
No, and that's the beauty of social media. That's the beauty and the curse. It's very equitable. When someone's looking at a website, it could be anyone's website. It could be someone who just started yesterday.
Yeah,
So it's just very accessible. And there are firms that do this 24/7. So they're targeting people's websites, which is really unfortunate. And another area that we do see is if you take an image off of social media, that may be owned by someone. So just because an image is on the internet doesn't mean that it's not owned. And so
yeah,
we see people getting into hot water by using images that were should have been licensed to them for a very reasonable fee, which could have been done if the homework was done. But they just assume that because it's on the internet, it's okay. And there are also predatory firms that will scour those images off of people's websites and sue. And we see five-figure settlements in those situations as well. So there's definitely a lot, your website is a big kind of, it can be a wonderful blessing, but it can also be a Pandora's box. So
yeah.
I mean, just again, working with someone who knows what they're doing it pays for itself.
Not to get too off topic here, but since you're kind of opening up some ideas here for me, what are you advising right now for your practices on social media policies with their staff?
So with respect to having like their own, because people sometimes have their own personal websites. Um, I think anything that's any patient photos, you have to have a before and after consent signed. We're advising people to always post terms and conditions, privacy policies on their websites. In terms of social media, if a provider is with the clinic and they have access to patient data, that's one thing. But if they leave and they want to kind of use that patient data, they have to understand that that's the clinic's agreement with the patient. Those are HIPAA protected images. It's not just for someone to just take if they depart the practice. So at the end of the day, these are medical practices, and
Yes.
HIPAA, privacy is alive and well.
Yeah, you are a med spa. Or
Absolutely.
a medical spa,
MPD.
pardon me. Let's put that terminology in there. Medical spa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Good stuff. Um, I know.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about kind of looking 3 years ahead. It's interesting. I'd be interested to hear your opinion about what's something that most practice owners still believe about marketing that's no longer true.
Yeah. Um, well, okay. I think that the biggest misconception is that marketing is something that you do. Um, and I don't believe that that's true anymore. Marketing has become something that your business is. Uh,
Yeah,
so let me explain a little bit what I mean by that. So, years ago, like, look, marketing is very straightforward. You run an ad, you send out a postcard, you buy a billboard, you sponsor the local baseball team, little league team, or whatever. And marketing happened in campaigns. Um, Today, marketing is something that happens in moments. Every review, every unanswered lead that you're getting, every website visit, every interaction with your Google business profile, that's all marketing. Whether you intended them to be or not, that's exactly what it is. And so, I always tell my practice owners, your patients don't experience your marketing department; they experience your practice. That's why we say it is who you are. Um, your digital presence is something that's very often the first interaction that they're going to have of your practice, before they
yeah,
meet you, before they meet your staff, long before they shake your hand, long before they even sit in your consultation room. They've already formed an opinion as to who you actually are. Um, I'm just gonna say, like, give an example. Like imagine that you're looking for a new practice to go to. You search online, one practice has incredible reviews, they've got current photos, educational content, and it clearly defines what it is that they do. Practice B, they have more outdated information. Their last review was from 2 years ago. The website still has a ticker counter on it from like the 1990s that said you were the 10,000th visitor to the site. It's been neglected.
Yeah.
And neither provider has actually spoken a word to the patient, but you've already decided who you actually trust.
Yeah.
That's marketing.
Mm.
Um, and here's what's really changed with what I've seen. Practices competed on who had the biggest advertising budget. That was years ago. And if you're competing on budget right now, you're losing sight of what's important. Um, Today they're competing on who builds the most trust before the conversation even happens, before the consultation even begins. I mean, think about that. That's a huge shift. Um,
Yeah.
AI isn't recommending practices based on who spent the most money. It's looking for credibility. It's looking at what I've said before. It's looking for consistency. It's looking for authority. In
Yeah.
many ways, AI is rewarding the practices that have been doing all the right things all along. And going back to what I said, it's about staying disciplined into your strategy. Um, so, if there's one belief
Yeah.
I'd encourage everyone to leave behind today, it's that, marketing isn't the department that brings the people to your door. Marketing, it's the experience that people have before they decide to even walk into your door. And in today's world, every digital interaction is either building confidence or it's helping to create more and sow more doubt. And that's where you have to be the difference maker, because the practices that understand that and they intentionally design every part of that experience are the ones that are going to continue to grow regardless of whatever new technology comes, whatever new tactic comes up the pike next. They're staying disciplined into that approach.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I think, patients were doing their own search before across a handful of websites. If a med spa had a passive social media presence, they were fine. And now AI is just compressing that research into a single AI generated answer or review aggregate. And as you were saying, if a med spa is not actively feeding the system with fresh reviews and clear content and accurate listings, it's just going to get left out of the summary a patient sees. Again, just kind of putting back the legal perspective, I think just going back to the main theme, legal compliance and marketing are definitely not separate divisions and departments and silos. They have to go hand in hand. So, regulatory scrutiny on everything from websites, patient reviews, how patient data is handled has only increased. So it's more important than ever for those two departments to work hand in hand.
Could not agree more. Yeah, it's staying compliant in that aspect is very, very critical. I'm curious to know what are some of the things that you are seeing today as to where on really the legal side that it's costing them the most revenue leakage, even before like a patient even comes into the door.
So I think, again, having the appropriate paperwork, any patient-facing paperwork that you have that essentially allows a patient to consent to an action is incredibly important. Again, kind of going back to that theme that legal and marketing go hand in hand. When you do a great job on a patient, you want to show, the patient wants to show off the results, you want to show off the results, you have to have a before and after consent signed. At that moment, everyone may be happy and jubilant, but they may have buyer's remorse, once their photo goes up on the internet. And if there hasn't been a consent sign in writing, that can come back to bite you. Um, I guess in addition to that, having consents for all the procedures done. People come in after you do all this marketing, you have your lead that's converted into a client, which is fantastic. But then when the client comes in, they're excited to have a procedure done. They need to sign a consent before that procedure is done. So it's kind of a skewed way of looking at patients, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because you want to have a positive experience. But at the same time, things go wrong. Things happen. There's unintended consequences with a procedure. And unless you have that consent that accurately describes all the negative side effects, you know, any possible bad outcomes to the most specificity as possible, you're opening your door to significant liability. So, document, 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 disclose, disclose, disclose is what we always tell clients.
Yeah, yeah, and we've also found that to be quite valuable as well too, on the data side with
Mm,
how it can be better leveraged to help you with your EBITDA.
mm, mm-hmm,
Talk about that discipline of staying documented and understanding your information, your practice information. It's so applicable into how you build actually the valuation into your practice as well too. Like you
mm-hmm,
have to understand. Can you look at a system right away and say like, okay, these are the average as to what our conversion rate are of lead flow directly from website visits? Can we look at a solution and say this is the average of new cadence of reviews that we're actively publishing? Um, all of those are measurable metrics that really help the practice to increase much more of its valuation. So yeah, documenting everything is so critical to protecting yourself, operating much more efficiently, growing your practice. Yeah, that's huge for the clients that we're serving as well too.
yeah, absolutely. And I think just quickly building on that, also people kind of being within their scope, just having compliant operations is a huge thing for someone looking to buy a practice as well. Are the proper people performing procedures? And that goes beyond just the marketing. That's more on the operations side, but that kind of goes into that depth that, you can have excellent outcomes, but are the proper people actually generating those outcomes? And that's again just going back into compliance and marketing, kind of working hand in hand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, I'm curious to know. We've got a really nice group here tonight. Let's if you don't mind, I mean, would it be fun to
Yeah,
kind of maybe open this up to some questions and answers?
sure. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
Um, so guys, we've got you know two experts here on the legal side, on the marketing side. With we're about 40 minutes into this presentation in here so far. What questions are coming to your mind? We would love to maybe hear a little bit from our team, from the crowd here tonight. Not to put anyone on the spot, but feel free, if there is anything here, raise your hand, submit it into the chat. We would love to kind of hear from you. I guess everyone's a little bit shy here tonight.
Mike, this is Rachel on the back end. We have a question in the Q&A from Randy, if you don't mind my reading it.
Sure, go ahead.
Since lead conversion is highest if answered within 30 minutes, is there a difference between conversions of different AI answering systems?
Yes, there is. So what I have seen, and when we talk about the engagement, is that how is there a response that's happening immediately? Is there some type of back and forth activity that's actually happening right now? When that is actively going on, and I've seen a lot of practice management systems that have their AI, but it really becomes more of a glorified form fill as opposed to something that's actively engaged. That's a big difference maker. That is the gap that we're actually looking to solve. And so, um, that website that I pulled out earlier here, let me just share this here with you. So, like, when we talk about this AI here, and let me zoom in here a little bit. This is our AI Maya, and so this is kind of inherently native into a website which is created, but it understands everything about your practice because of the information and the content that is living onto the site. So when I ask this AI here, what do you do for PRP? Now, as we all know, PRP can be used for a lot of different things. It could be used for pain management. But in this particular case, what it's understanding here is that it's all based around, we use this into targeted areas of the skin as well as the scalp. Are you interested in PRP for thinning hair on the scalp or really for skin rejuvenation? So again, this is what we're talking about when we talk about immediate engagement with leads.
Mm.
Let me show you another example. This is just another client of ours that we have, that a beautiful website that we had created here. But when we look at this AI here, it's really just effectively just a form that's on the website that says, hey, submit your information. So this is where we're talking about, is the engagement happening now versus is it something that's going to be delayed? And that engagement is the gap that is what helps to either win the revenue or to delay the revenue. And particularly when we consider that, when you start to set your foundation, that will either make things better or continue to expose issues. When you factor in how time can make things worse or better, those are the gaps that we're really looking to solve. I don't want to take the marketing play of this. We've got so many people here. I know that you guys have some legal questions.
There are some in the Q&A. Do you see that Q&A box in there, Mike?
I don't see it, Rachel.
Okay, I'll just kind of voice them over. Okay, so Sherry asked, peptides compliance in Texas. Can AI cover telemedicine GFEs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm sure in 5 years it's going to be a different world, but at this point, especially with peptides and obviously the FDA's PSAC, PCAC committee, they have endorsed several peptides, but nothing legally has changed at this point. So I would highly recommend just staying the course. Good faith exams should be done by nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or physician to clear the patient. And then the second step would be a patient-specific order needs to be written by nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or physician. Then the patient signs a consent form, and then the peptide can be administered. So I know there are a lot of pretty incredible programs that are doing AI-generated GFEs. I would still stick to the basics because the law hasn't caught up to what's going on with this. So, obviously, and unfortunately, regulatory scrutiny has skyrocketed. So we're not there yet. So I would stay the course for now, but who knows? And it's evolving so rapidly that who knows, in 3 to 5 years, we may be saying different things. But for now, I'd stay the course.
Awesome. We have one more from Sophia. Hi, I have a professional PLLC for my Medi Spa, but NYSEDE will not approve Inner Beauty Glow as a DBA. Am I still allowed to use Inner Beauty Glow as my branding name and my website, signage, marketing, social media, etc., while keeping all legal and business documents under my PLLC? Or is there another legal way to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So New York is very picky with names for professional entities. So they want the name of the entity to be related to the owner's name or their address. And the same thing applies to the DBA, which is the doing business as name, which is like that public brand name. So one way to kind of work around that is maybe look into federally trademarking the name at the national level. And we actually do provide that service. So we initially do a name clearance search to make sure the name has not been trademarked yet. And then if it's clear, we can actually file for the federal trademark. So then your PLLC will own the name, have the rights to the name at a much broader scale than even New York State. So that's one way of handling it. But yeah, I mean, the New York Education Department is very, very picky with names. So that's a great question. Good to be proactive.
Right. Rachel, do we have any more?
That's it on the Q&A. Sophia, did that answer your question? If there's more, let us know. Yes, it did. Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's all
Well,
I've got.
let's delve into one more question here. This has been such a great conversation. I've so enjoyed getting to just always get brushed up and caught up on some of these, the things that are affecting the legal landscape and marketing as well too. So, um, So the question I have is, what would you say to the practice owner? And look, I'm sure the legal aspect of this can be quite intimidating for a lot of folks when they're just getting their practice started, right? But what would you say to the practice owner that knows that the market is changing, but I'm still going to kind of sit on the sidelines and wait it out for a better time to adapt because I don't know if, the law that's in place today is going to change, 1 month from now. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think to kind of think of it as market timing. And I think people who, if you're doing like a stock market analogy, if you stay the course, you probably will do better over time than trying to pick the exact timing of the market. It's the same thing with law. And in this space, because it's gained so much publicity over the past couple of years, there are so many pending bills happening that are not quite yet there. There's a lot of laws that are changing. Um, I still think, and I know you were kind of referring to this earlier, just stay the course. I mean, you can get distracted. You can spend 24 hours a day being distracted as to with all the noise that's going on, whether it's AI or even in the law. But if you stick with the fundamentals of having the appropriate people doing the patient onboarding, like we were talking about earlier, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, physician, clearing the patient, writing the patient specific order, having the consent signed, having the appropriate providers doing the procedures, whether they're medical, it should be medical professionals. If it's aesthetic, it should be in the aesthetic realm. Structuring your business properly. Some states restrict corporate practice of medicine, some of them permit it. So whether you need an MSO or not, I know those terms get thrown around quite a bit. Those fundamentals will take you very, very far. Um, Obviously, laws will change, but if you stick with the base and try to operate at the highest compliance standards, always, you'll always be in a good position. You can always, there's always a good faith, it's a defensible position. It might not be perfect, but trying to do the right thing, having the right intentions, and operating at a level of excellence, you can really not go wrong. So I think that's kind of my fair weather approach to it.
Mhm.
Kind of the Warren Buffett approach to law.
Buy low, you sell
Yeah,
high.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, buy low, sell high, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that as well too. You know, Getting back to that question on like, hey, the market's changing. I'm still waiting. You know, for a better time to adapt, whatever that might be. I will say this on the marketing side as to what we see with this question is that I understand your hesitation. Practice owners that have been asked to constantly adapt over the years. I mean, we're talking about staffing shortages and inflation and COVID, dear Lord.
Mm,
Changing
yeah.
patient expectations, regulations, new technology. Every few months, someone seems to appear and say like, "Oh, this is the next thing that you have to be paying attention to." So, like, I completely understand why an owner might think maybe I'm just going to wait until like everything settles down. Um, the problem that we see on the business building side is that I don't think it's going to ever settle down.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
Markets they just do not wait for us to become comfortable. And patients
yeah,
don't wait either. Technology doesn't wait, and your competitors, by the way, they're not going to be waiting either. So the practices that adapt, and they usually become the practices that everyone else is trying to catch years later. Um, Gosh, I think about back 15 years ago when I first got started in this space. There were practice owners were saying like, "Oh, I don't need a website. My patients come from referrals." And then the conversation became like, "Oh, I don't think that online reviews matter." And then, "Oh, social media, it's not really relevant to my patients." And now the conversation that we're having today is like, I'm not convinced that AI is going to affect my practice. You know, so the technology it changes, yes, but the pattern really stays the same. And I think that the biggest risk is often it's not about making the wrong decision per se. It's about making no decision. Um,
Mm,
Nothing feels safe. It feels inexpensive. It feels like it's a lower cost option, but doing nothing really does become the true cost. And it usually does not show up as one dramatic event, but it's something that does happen much more gradually. And every month that a practice does not invest into their growth is just another practice that's earning more reviews. It's another practice that's publishing content that answers questions that patients that you have are asking them. So again, it's that sitting on the sidelines and saying like, ugh, I'm just going to kind of maybe, I don't know what to do. That really is the opportunity cost. And that becomes just very difficult to see because it never appears on the line item on your financial statement. So there's never ever going to be a good time to build your practice, by the way. Just how there's never going to be a good time to invest into an Airbnb when there's a war and oil shortages that are happening, like what I'm doing right now.
yeah. Yeah,
So you have
absolutely.
to, kind of go with it. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Those are great points. Yeah.
Well, guys, listen, I just want to thank you all for attending here this evening. This has been, I would say, just a great conversation. I've really enjoyed learning a little bit more about what you have to share. How can folks get in touch with you if they have any questions, they want to book a meeting? How do we work that with you guys?
Yeah. So we have our lengealaw.com website, and you can book a free consultation. We have complimentary consults. Oh,
Uh,
sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah, no.
Oh, I sorry. I heard. I thought I heard some talking. So yeah, we offer initial complimentary consultations. So you can just book it right on our website. It's lengealaw.com.
Well,
And we love to speak with you more.
yeah, I'm pulling this up right now here, guys. You see it right here in the front and center. It's a complimentary consultation, free call. Like, take advantage of that if you can. By the way, I just have to say, I mean, we talked so much tonight about reviews and responses and how important that is. You guys walk the walk and you talk the talk, because who could not be more impressed with a 5.0 rated law practice with nearly 250 reviews? I'm just going to
Thank
read
you.
this out loud here. Is that Lengea is the best legal team, hands down. Samara has been an amazing help,
Yeah.
educated me so much on the legalities of IV hydration business and assisted me with the creation of my business formation.
Yeah.
Say
She's great.
agreements. I mean, like, you could not ask for more than this. And so, guys, yeah, if you're not working with Lengea, I know this from personal experience. They are the best in the business.
Yeah.
Talk.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And obviously likewise, Michael, just so many insights and just invaluable advice. Definitely should be reaching out to you for more just long-term advice. I just definitely appreciate your wisdom, frankly, because there's so much noise going on in this space right now. But definitely appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I do have freckles on my face, and you are making me blush as opposed to just rocketing out some more Irish freckles here. But thank you, I appreciate that. Um, on the same token as well, too, guys. I've talked a lot about tonight personally about having better systems in place, and I really want to make this more of a conversation here tonight. But what I can say just in closing is that the practices that are winning the revenue are the ones that have a revenue system where your marketing is not siloed, but it's actually the data is speaking with one another, and it helps you to understand what is the return on investment for me as a business owner. Not to give anyone a pitch here, but this is really a visual representation of what does a revenue system actively look like for your practice. So I'll leave you here with this. So again, your website, your AI, your CRM, your optimization, your listings management, your reviews, it's all really consolidated into one main platform. So if we're halfway through the year now at this point, I'm having so many conversations on thinking about Q4 right now. so many patients are looking to get things done before the year closes. The reality is that it's going to take you time to build out your presence to hit that marker. So if we're really thinking about capitalizing on the back half of this year, I would love to be able to talk with you, offering a complimentary, evaluation of your website as well as your digital presence. We're also offering all attendees here as well as registrants a 20% discount on all of our services through the month of August, the end of August. And so would love to be able to take you guys and to be able to share that with you. If you would like to have a consultation with myself or one of our other consultants, my brother Robbie, who is not here tonight, feel free to take out your phone, scan this QR code. This will sync directly into our calendars. Combined, we bring over 25 years of experience into helping your practice to really grow. So with that end, Rachel, do we have any other questions and answers that had filtered in through the Q&A that would be helpful for us to know?
I think we can, or they're kind of specific. Would be okay, Sharon, if I send those to you after this and you can respond to them separately?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
perfect, just because we're at time basically. So, yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much here. Thank you so much for your time. Again, I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you to everyone else who have taking time out of your evening, your late afternoon to join us here this evening. So have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.